I would like to talk to you about your limitless potential. Now, I don't know how much you've had to do with springs, like the metal kind of springs, but springs have energy. If you imagine a spring all coiled up, and when it's pinged, that energy makes it fly across the room. It just absolutely flies. However, when you have a spring and you pull it apart and you stretch it, what that's called is potential energy. You see, it's energy that's not yet been used, but it's there because you've pulled it apart and you've stretched it. What you've done is created the potential for that spring to really fly. Now, something that I want to talk to you about here is the process of having potential. You see, in order for that spring to even have potential energy, it has to be stretched out of shape. It has to be pulled. It has to be stretched and molded in a way that actually probably feels really unnatural for the spring and maybe quite painful. Do you know in Jeremiah 18, there's a verse which talks about us as humans as clay in the potter's hand. And it says this: as the clay is in the potter's hand, so you are in my hand. If we give our lives completely to God, then God wants to use the potential that we have, but he has to build that potential in us. And so what that can sometimes feel like is this spring being stretched and pulled out of shape. And it can be uncomfortable, it can be painful. But in all of this difficulty and struggle, God is building potential in us. But when does potential become actual energy? When does potential become action? When it's released. When the spring is released and the more it's been stretched, the further it will fly. At that point, our potential is realized. And so will you let God stretch you? Will you let your potential be realized by releasing some of the gifts that you have? What are you good at? What are the things you're passionate about? What are the things that God has made you amazing at? And if you don't know, maybe have a conversation with someone who knows you well and ask them. But we have to release those gifts to God. We have to say, God, I'm willing to use this for you in order for our potential to be realized. So firstly, will you let God stretch you today? Even though it's uncomfortable and can be painful, will you say to God, teach me everything you want me to know in this? And will you release the gifts that you have to God? Maybe it's vlogging, maybe it's running, maybe it's sport or music, or you're just great with people. Will you say, God, use that for you? And so today, maybe you could go away and make a note of some of the areas that you're really struggling in, and see and pray and think, what might God want to be growing in me in this? And then maybe you could think about some of the gifts you're good at and have a real intentional time of saying, God, I lay this gift into your hands.